This walkthrough is for Module 3, Poverty in Education. Poverty in Education is due by April 4th at 6 p.m. In modules, you'll find two resources here, the slides that we'll go to, and then also the submit portion. When you're done with your actual written report, you'll click on this to submit your Google Doc assignment. We're going to start by clicking on our assignment info slides. Similar to our previous module, instead of staying here within Canvas, we're actually going to click on the gray bar at the top and take us to a full screen mode of the slides. So Module 3, Poverty in Education, as you can see here, it is green. So we're going to go to the green slides, Module 3. We have our information for our assignment here. So Poverty in Education is a two-part written assignment. Part 1 is simply gathering and exploring resources available to you in our article bank here. So the article bank houses many resources that you'll be able to find, but you are not limited to that. Another great resource are counselors and administrators within your building. So I'd encourage you to reach out to them, especially for part 2. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time, is part 2 of the written assignment, the actual production of what you'll do. Our guide is at the bottom of the slide. So we're going to click on this, which is going to take us to a link to create a copy of the report that we'll create. So again, at the top, similar to our previous assignment, we're going to remove the copy of and replace it with our last name in all caps. And the structure is already laid out for you. You'll enter your name, and then you'll find the directions for the report, again, similar to the assignment slides. After completing part 1, your research of really digging into what poverty looks like within education, you're going to examine current policies, procedures, and practices at your school in hopes of identifying several systems. That means 3 or more systems or structures that tend to exclude or create an inequity for impoverished students. A few examples of that: policies of having appropriate attire for PE. Some students may not have shorts or clean shorts or running shoes. That policy and expectation is not fair to some kids. We have an issue with hoods and hats with kids, and many of our students that do choose to wear hoods are actually trying to hide the fact that they can't afford a haircut, and they're trying to cover things up. And that is a school policy, a rule, and they're penalized for it. So we've adjusted that. Procedures could be a lunch procedure. If a student doesn't have money to get additional items for lunch and they're limited to a option of just a basic lunch, possibly, and we've seen this in the news, maybe a cheese sandwich is provided to them as opposed to healthier or more better options for them that they just don't have the money for. That could be a procedure that's in place. And current practices in your own classroom could be identified that create inequities or inaccess for students, especially with being digital at times. I encourage you, strongly encourage you, to reach out to your counselor and administrator at your school to ask them what policies, what procedures, what classroom practices have you observed that create inequity for impoverished students. To help guide you on this and come up with some information, there are some guiding questions to explore listed here. The next step as you begin to construct your report is to review the rubric of what's expected. This should end up being about 2 to 3 pages when it's done, because you're going to, again, list several systems of inequity towards impoverished students. So 3 or more systems in play in your school. Policy, number 1. Number 2 is procedure, and number 3 is practices to examine. If there's 2 policies and 1 practice, that is absolutely fine. So not all 3 have to be covered, but you do need to have a report that includes at least 3 of those systems.